Okay, I'm just waiting for the notification of this to appear on the screen. Okay, the meeting is now recording, so I will begin by taking the sudeiren for the Finance and Corporate Resources Committee on Wednesday, the 2nd of June 2021. Okay, do we have Councillor Allison?
Councillor Allison sends his apologies.
Thank you, Councillor. I can see that we have John Anderson. Do we have Walter Brogan?
Present.
Thank you. We have Graham Campbell. Do we have Peter Craig?
Yeah, I'm here.
I can see that we have Maureen Devlin. Do we have Isabel Dorman?
Yeah.
Thank you. I can see that we have Joe Fagan. We have Grant Ferguson. Do we have Jerry Gray? No. Ian Harrow? No. I can see that we have Eric Holford and Graham Horn. We have Eileen Logan. Do we have Joe Lowe? No. We have Monique McAdams, Catherine McClyman, Hugh MacDonald. Do we have Mark McGeever? No. We have Jim McGuigan, Gladys Miller, Maura Zack. Do we have John Ross? No. Colette Stevenson?
Apologies for Colette.
Thank you. And I have apologies from Jim Mortaugh, and we also have Jared Wark here. Officers present this afternoon are Paul Manning, Craig Ferguson, Tom Little, Geraldine McCann, Kay McVeigh, Jackie Taylor, Brian Tees, Yvonne Douglas, Karen McLeod, and myself, Carol Lyon. I'll pass back to yourself, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Carol. First of all, do we have any declarations of interest? No. The minutes, item 2 is the minutes.
Gladys, Catherine here. I didn't get my hand up quick enough. Sorry.
Sorry, Catherine.
Item 10, declare an interest on the toll booth. I'm a trustee for the council on that, thanks.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Catherine. And what we'll do is just before that item, if you leave the meeting, then we'll get you back in for the next item. Thanks very much, Catherine. Item 2 is the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any matters arising? Can we approve?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Item 3 is the minutes of the appeal panel. And item 4 of the recruitment committee. Can we approve both the minutes?
Agreed.
Okay, that takes us on to the monitoring items. And the first one is the revenue budget monitoring 2020 to 21 for Finance and Corporate Resources. And Jackie's going to take us through that, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our revenue monitoring report, and this covers the period up to the 26th of February this year. I also have in the report an update as we're close to finalising our year-end position as well. So we'll take the opportunity just to give you a quick update on that. So on page 15, under the background, as always, we're reporting that the financial position for the resource is detailed in Appendix A, and each of the services of the resource are covered in appendices B through to I. Now, Appendix I includes information in relation to spend on the pandemic. And again, that follows the process that we've done in previous committees. If I take you over to page 16 and under the financial implications, at section 5.1, we're reporting what our probable outturn was indicating in terms of our spend for the year. And we have been reporting that we expect an overspend of just under £7.2 million. Now, whilst that's a very high figure, that does include the cost that we've incurred in relation to COVID, which is all bar £30,000 of that overspend. And that spend on COVID relates to expenditure and also loss of income that the resource has felt. At section 5.3, we are reporting our position as at the 26th of February, which is when this report is dated. And at that point in time, we were reporting an overspend of £6.393 million. Now, that is in line with our expected outturn for the year. And at section 5.7, I've included that year-end update as we are nearing the end of our year-end processes. Our accounts will be published later on this month, and we are seeing a position excluding COVID, which is very much in line with where we expect it to be. However, a couple of updates are included there at section 5.7, which includes an indication that some of the money that we were notified of later in the year in relation to employability programmes will carry forward to be spent in 21-22, and that's just over £3.1 million. We're also going to request carrying forward £60,000 of our community grants budget that hasn't been spent this year, but we'll make that available next year to be spent in the way that the budget for 21-22 will be spent. And then finally, some 129,000 in relation to funding for the Scottish Welfare Fund will also be requested to transfer into reserves to spend in 2021-22 as well. All of those requests in terms of transfers to reserves will be made to the Executive Committee later on this month. So as I said, from pages 18 onwards, we have the appendices for each of the individual services and a summary at Appendix A. In terms of the recommendations for the report chair, they're detailed at section 2, and we're looking that the forecasts for the year are noted and that the overspend position at the 26th of February is noted as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Are there any questions? Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to item 6, which is the capital budget monitoring 2021. And I believe Jackie's going to take us through that as well.
I am. So capital this time, same period covering up to the 26th of February. But again, I'll give you a pre-year-end update as well. So section 3.2 of the report reminds us that our programme for the year is just under £3.3 million. And at section 5 in the financial implications, we're reporting that to the 26th of February, we had spent £1.6 million. Our expected outturn for the year is detailed at section 5.2, and we were expecting an underspend of around £677,000 by the end of the year. However, in terms of our actual position that we are seeing, we do expect that it will be a slightly higher underspend, predominantly due to the COVID impact on some of the projects that we've been incurring, particularly around the cared exit project. And we do expect that we will have a further underspend, and that funding will carry forward into next year to allow that project to conclude. The appendix on page 29 shows a summary of the budget for the year in terms of our capital programme and our actual expenditure. And again, in terms of recommendations, we're asking that the positions noted. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Are there any questions? Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to Finance and Corporate Resources, Workforce Monitoring. And sorry, I haven't been mentioning the page numbers. It's page number 31 to 38. And Kay's going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, it's the Workforce Monitoring Report. This one just for Finance and Corporate Resources, covering January to March. And I'll just pick out a few highlights from the report. So in terms of attendance statistics at section 4, you'll see the resource absence figure for March this year was 3.5%, and that's given us an annual average absence for the resource of 2.8%, so comparing favourably with the council-wide figure, and 2.8% or 6.4 days for those that prefer it in days. Over the period, we had 59 referrals to occupational health, and similarly over the period we had 3 leavers for the resource, with exit interviews being held with a third of those. And I'm asking the committee to note the employment information in the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Kay. Are there any questions? Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to now the council-wide, item 8, council-wide workforce monitoring, January to March, and pages 39 to 60. And Kay's going to take us through that one as well.
Thank you, Chair. Same workforce monitoring report, this time covering the whole of the Council for January to March. So in terms of attendance statistics at section 4, you'll see the Council absence rate for March is 4.9%, and that's giving us an average for the year of 4.2% or 9.9 days. As you can see in the bullets at the top of page 40, musculoskeletal and psychological conditions remain our main reasons for absence over the period, but musculoskeletal conditions decreasing quite a bit over the period, and similarly respiratory in comparison with March this time last year. Obviously, it's been an unusual year over the period. We've also got a reduction in stomach, bowel, blood and metabolic disorders over the period. We've done a little exercise to look at our underlying absence if we take out the impact of COVID-19, and our underlying absence for the year was 3.7%, so a little bit down in comparison with underlying absence in the previous year. Section 5 takes you through the occupational health response in order to support employees coming back to work, and they are much in, as you would expect, given the pattern of absence. In terms of accidents and incidents, we had over 400 minor accidents and incidents over the year, up slightly in comparison with the same period last year. And turning to section 8, in terms of labour turnover, as I've been reporting to committee, it's still remarkably low. So over the period, 0.7%, giving us an annual figure of 2.4% for the year. So I think a continuing picture there. In terms of recruitment monitoring, we are still recruiting, so over 4,700 applications. And over this period, in terms of applicants who declared themselves as disabled, 15 were appointed in this period. We had 9 appointed from applicants from a black or ethnic minority background. And unfortunately, during this period, we had no veterans appointed for any of the positions, although some were shortlisted for interview. And again, I'm asking the committee to note the contents of the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Kay. First question up is from Mo.
Thanks, Chair. Page 59, Kay, you'll not be surprised I'm going to ask the question. First one is the total number of disabled applicants is 42% getting an interview, which is excellent. But 15 getting the job, that works out to 6% success rate. That compared to total number of white applicants, 33% got the interview and 12% got the job, were appointed, sorry. Now, further down, black ethnic minorities, 33% got the interview and 4% were successful and were appointed. And with veterans, 33% interviewed and none were appointed. Firstly, there seems to be a strange anomaly where 33% of applicants that were white, black ethnic minority and veterans were all interviewed. I was sure at one of the briefings that we were told that veterans were going to be all interviewed. That's number one. And the other, I'm disappointed that the disabled applicants had half the success rate of white applicants, and also black ethnic minorities had a third of the success rate compared to the white applicants as well. And comparing that to last year's figures, it's quite poor.
Kay, would you like to?
Yes, certainly. So if I just take those in order, in relation to veteran applicants, it is the same conditions as, for example, disabled candidates. They need to meet the essential criteria of the post before that it's a guaranteed interview scheme if they meet the essential criteria. Because there's relatively small numbers there, I have had a look actually at the numbers who were interviewed and the reasons that they were not successful on this occasion. And it is unfortunate when you look at relatively small numbers. On occasions there will be none being successful through that process. So having been in touch with some of the managers and asking why some of those who were interviewed were not then appointed from a veterans perspective. Quite simply, there was an interviewee who was more qualified or more suitable for the particular role. But I've asked the recruitment team to keep a track, particularly the veteran applicants, because that's quite a new area that we're looking at. It's a relatively small number, and we can keep a very close eye on that. As we've discussed in the equity working group, we've been talking about how we can encourage more applicants through from a Black and ethnic minority background, and similarly look at the specific issues that perhaps are leading to those being interviewed not being successful in the role. So there's a lot of material that's come through the equity working group in relation to that. And I think now we're really beginning to turn our attention to the disabled candidates as well. So I think we've talked about some work to be done round about that area, just to fully understand what the issues are, and again, why they're not necessarily coming through from an interview to be successful. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Kay. I have a question from John Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Kay, I'm just wondering, just listening to your speech there about why some people didn't successful getting a job. Could we maybe have a breakdown on that? Not in everyone, but like the minorities, ethnic minorities, the Black and ethnic minorities, or the disabled and the veterans, but it's small numbers. Just, I mean, some of them overqualified, underqualified, or as you said earlier, some folk who have better qualifications are getting the job. Maybe just a wee breakdown in some of them might be helpful for us.
Yeah, certainly. I've actually requested, particularly starting round about the veteran side, because it is small numbers, so it's very easily kept separately in a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, our national system, our national recruitment system, doesn't necessarily allow us to draw out stuff that we would wish to use in that way. So we're keeping a separate version of that. I think we'll try, as I suggest, try the same, even if we're sampling some of the other categories, just to make sure that we're fully understanding why they've not been successful between interview and being appointed. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kay. Can we agree the report, please?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, that takes us on to the items for noting. And the first one is, items for decision. And the first one is item 9, which is revenue collection and approval for write-offs. It's at pages 61 to 66. And Craig's going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. The report advises committee of the collection performance to end of the financial year, 31st of March, the latest position in respect to the business rates incentivisation scheme for the year, and also seeks approval for write-offs. Paragraph 4.3, members will recall that in light of the health crisis, did actually review our collection targets for 2021, and effectively this report provides information in relation to those revised targets. Section 5 covers the current collection performance, with the first table in Appendix A providing additional information. In respect of council tax, we finished the year ahead of target by 1.19%, but behind comparable for the previous year. Similar position for non-domestic rates, again ahead of target in year by 0.8, but again behind comparable for the previous year. And also for sundry debt collection, where we finished the year ahead of target by 7.8%, but similar to the previous two income streams, we're behind comparable performance for the previous year. Section 6 of the report provides information in relation to the arrears collection performance, again with the Appendix A providing some further information. Beginning with council tax, we finished the year ahead of target, just over £1 million. The position for non-domestic rates, again similarly ahead of target by just over £400,000. And then for sundry debt, again ahead of target by just over £240,000. Section 7 provides an update in respect of the position for the business rates incentivisation scheme. And given the impact of the COVID-19 health crisis, the annual target for South Lanarkshire is yet to be confirmed. From information, the final target for 1920 was 1%. Further guidance and information is currently awaited from Scottish Government in relation to what the plans will now be for 2021. Section 8 of the report details the proposals for write-off for committee's consideration, beginning with council tax. It also includes sundry debt, former tenant rent arrears, and also arrears for former occupants of homeless temporary accommodation. The value of these write-offs is fully provided for by Housing Services, and further write-offs are expected as outstanding accounts continue to be reviewed. If I can refer committee back to section 2 of the report and ask that performance for revenue collection is noted, the current position in respect to the business rates incentivisation scheme is noted, and the write-offs as listed at point 3 be approved. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Craig. We have a question, Walter?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think what I'm looking for basically is some breakdown in terms of the detail, probably going back about 10 years, by ward and by area, especially for council tax collection and obviously the write-offs. I'm just hoping that by looking at that we can take a look at our individual wards and see what's really happening there. I don't think we've ever been down to that level of detail, so it might take a wee while to get it, but I'd like to see that detail if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. And still, that's not information we have currently got access to, but so I can take that away as an action from today's meeting.
Thank you.
Paul, do you want to come in there?
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. It's just to say, I think we would. There's two things. We don't produce that information. I don't know if we've got the facility to get that information. I'd need to look at what the cost would be, right? And I'd need to have a discussion with a member about what the intention is that we would use the information for.
Mm-hmm.
Right, before I make any commitment, or I have my officer make a commitment to producing a breakdown of that nature for a multi-year period. Thanks, Chair. So I'm happy to pick that up offline. Thank you.
We're happy to do that, Paul.
Thanks very much. Any other questions? I'll approve the report.
I'll second it, Chair.
Thanks very much. That takes us on to item 10. Catherine, do you want to leave us at this point and we'll get you back in? Lovely. Okay, item 10 is the Common Good update, and I believe Jackie's going to take us through that.
Yep, thank you, Chair. We often bring a Common Good update to this meeting, and this is covering a couple of items. A project from the bigger Common Good Fund and some updates on a couple of projects that have been underway in Lanark. So firstly, if I can take you to section 4.1, section 4. This is around the bigger Common Good project. We had a request for funding for a project around lighting on a path between Campsey's Garage on Coulter Road and the Bog Hall Estate. We consulted with local members and the Community Council, who undertook their own consultation in order to see the views on providing £8,000 for this lighting. The response to the consultation has been positive. There's £33,000 currently in Bigger Common Good Fund, and there's no assets to maintain, so it is proposed that £8,000 is agreed to do that work. Section 5, in relation to Lanark Common Good, toll booth is one of the assets that sits within Common Good, and there is an issue with dampness within that building. The council, as owners of that building, has a responsibility to maintain that property, and the estimated cost of works to remedy that dampness is just over £10,000, and that will be funded from the £15,000 allocation that sits within Common Good for repairs and maintenance in 2021-22. That doesn't need approval by this committee. We have delegated powers to spend up to £15,000 on repairs and maintenance. And at section 6, an update on the Lanark Loch project, again a project that's been underway for a period of time around paths and also around the loch itself. A budget has been set aside within Common Good for this and approved by committee. We are now finished the work and the final costs are being assessed. However, I'm pleased to say that the final costs of the works are well within the budget that was approved by committee. We'll have a final update on that in the next committee in September. So in terms of recommendations, we're asking that the £8,000 for the lighting project from the bigger Common Good is approved, and that the spend on the toll booth is noted, as well as the update on the Lanark Loch project be noted as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Jackie. I have a question from Eric Colford.
Hi, thank you, Chair. The project in Biggar with the streetlights, I'm very concerned by this. There is a dark path which requires some street lighting. A report was commissioned from SLC. SLC said that it needed the streetlights that we're talking about here. However, the council has no obligation to provide streetlights. It simply can do if it chooses to do so, and not if it chooses not to do so. In this case, they've said that they don't have the funds, so they won't be doing it. Now, Biggar is in the wind farm, the Clyde wind farm area, so they could have applied for a wind farm grant. However, they applied for a wind farm grant and were turned down on the basis that the wind farm believes that this should be a council obligation, and that the wind farm is not there to simply replace the council's obligations to provide street lighting. And of course, almost all street lighting is provided by the council. So they're left to the position of using the Common Good Fund. This will denude the fund by about a third. And there are already 2 other projects which are now being put up in Biggar for other areas of street lighting. And I'm very concerned that this is going ahead. And I think really it should be the obligation of the council to pay for street lighting, and not for Common Good funds, or indeed, in fact, for the wind farm funds. These things should be paid for extra things over and above what the council's minimum requirement should really be, and not to make up the shortfalls of what SLC refuses to pay for. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Jackie, do you want to respond?
Yep, obviously our colleagues in Roads were party to this discussion, and it's not an area where they would prioritise in terms of provision of lighting. That's why the application to the Common Good Fund was made. It's absolutely appropriate that Common Good funds can be considered for use on Common Good assets, and this land does fall within that area. So it is appropriate that we can use that money to undertake these works, as it wouldn't be a priority for the council to invest in. That's obviously why it comes to this committee for approval, but it is something that would be an appropriate use of funds. Thanks.
Eric, do you want to come back in again?
Well, only to say that one of the things that a council really should do is to make sure that our roads and paths are safe. And for a dark path with steps, I should point out, there's a series of quite steep steps here. Not to provide the lighting for them, just it seems to me entirely remiss, and how that can't be a priority just beggars belief as far as I'm concerned. But I've raised the point, I've made the point, that's it really. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eric. Eileen, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Could I ask a question? If this ground is in Common Good ownership and Common Good land, then I would assume or presume that it is not then within the gift of the council's ownership. And there's many places throughout the whole of South Lanarkshire in the same boat, some wee private estates where contractors walked away, just a whole lot of different areas and places. So therefore, is that the reason why it is not a council responsibility to use council tax money, our money, to put in lights to areas that they don't belong to? Because if that is the case and we should be putting it in there, then I think a lot of people then would be drawing up lists of areas that they have, because, you know, I know in my area I've got some, but my assumption was that if it was sitting in common good land, then it's not council owned, so therefore it is not necessarily and wholly a council responsibility.
Chair, I can come back on that, yep. Councillor Logan, in terms of ownership of assets or land, all of the assets in South Lanarkshire that fall under common good do technically, they are technically owned by the council legally. However, we know that common good assets and land are held separately and have their own governance and regulation. In terms of the response about providing lighting in this particular area, it is a path, I believe, and as I say, the road service have looked to say this wouldn't be a high priority for them to consider anyway. Common good is a pot of funds that can be accessed, particularly for areas like this and other kind of common good assets, which gives us an opportunity to undertake works that wouldn't be done elsewhere. So it's a I suppose a fortunate position that we have this fund available and that we're able to consider putting this lighting in, following this request from an individual in the community.
Thanks, Jackie. Eric, do you want to come back in?
If you don't mind. This is actually just an ordinary council path. The fact that it's in bigger means that the common good funds apply to bigger as a whole. It's not that this path is a common good asset. It's just an ordinary council maintained, council owned path and staircase, which happens to be in the dark. It's below the road level. So it's in shade a lot of the time as well. So, but particularly in the winter, it is very dark down there, and there are steep steps. But it's a council path. The council would put lighting there if it was high enough on their priority list. It simply is that this particular path is not considered by SLC to be sufficiently high priority. My concern is that the council is rather let off the hook here by the fact that there are common good funds and that they could be used for this. But I suspect that this will open the floodgates and the common good fund will be used up in no time. But I also note, in Lanark, when the bid put in for lights to be put in some of the alleyways, the bid paid for the fittings and the council paid for the installation. Here, the Common Good Fund is being asked to pay not only for the fittings, but also the installation. The difference being it would cost about £600 to pay for the fittings, and it's costing £8,000 to pay for the fittings plus installation, which is really putting a big hole in the funds for what is frankly a safety issue, which is recognised by South Lanarkshire Council. And yet it falls back on the Common Good Fund to pay for it. And I just think that's not, shouldn't be appropriate. But, there we are.
Thanks very much, Eric. And your comments are noted and minuted.
Thank you.
So if there aren't any further questions, I'll approve the report.
Second it.
Thanks very much. I think now we can have Catherine back in again.
Yeah, Chair, I'll just request that she rejoins the meeting.
If you can bear with us, colleagues, to get our other colleague back in again.
Chair, I think that's her back with us now.
Okay, thanks very much, Carol. Right, that takes us on to item 11, which is the Information and Communication Technology Asset Management Plan. It's pages 71 to 92. And I'm not sure if Paul or Brian is going to take us through that.
I think it's myself, Chair.
Thanks, Brian.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to provide you with an update on outcomes of the annual ICT asset planning exercise. As described in section 3, the ICT asset management plan as part of the council's structures of asset management plans, which covers the areas noted there. So this is an annual process, and the outcomes are described in section 4. The main activities that have arisen out of this plan are, first of all, we're required to complete our migration of all of our Windows PCs to Windows 10. That will complete later in the year. We have a major project to exit from the Caird data centre. This will move all of our computer servers and storage to an external provider, and that will complete in December 21. There are ongoing upgrades and refreshes to the council's data network, just simply because of age or support. We do have some small telephone systems that are required to be replaced. We have some mobile phones which are in older versions of Android, and for functionality reasons, we're in the process of upgrading them, starting with the home care, which accounts for quite a few of those. And finally, we have several software applications which are now considered to be legacy and are either being evaluated for replacement or being actively replaced. These may be systems which don't work particularly well in the agile working environment, or they don't work well with Windows 10. So there's quite a sea change in our applications environment. This is all described in detail in the Asset Management Plan, which is in Appendix 1. And in terms of recommendations, I'd ask that the committee notes the contents of the report and that they approve the ICT Asset Management Plan for 21-22. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Brian. And the IT term legacy is just old. It's just very old.
Ancient.
Are there any questions? I'm happy to approve the report.
I'll second it, Chair.
Thanks very much. And the next items are items for noting, colleagues. Are you happy to take the items for noting as a pack?
Yes.
We agree?
Yep.
Agreed.
Gladys, Catherine here, I've got my hand up.
Catherine, yep.
No, it was just regarding the flexible retirement, which is part of one of the reports. And it was the only place I had the opportunity to ask this question, but it's been brought to my attention, it might be completely wrong, that flexible retirement is no longer going to be an option for council employees. Is that something that we've made a decision on, or is it just a rumour, or is it something that the pension fund have made a decision on? Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. Kay, can you respond to that?
Yeah, certainly can, Catherine. Councillor McClyman, that's not true. We've got plenty of employees applying for and going through flexible retirement. A slight reduction this year as more folk have fully retired, but I fully expect flexible retirement still to be an attractive option for people.
Can I just ask a supplementary? So it's not in the cards that we will be thinking about this. It'll be something we'd have to go in front of the council and write and thinking that.
It's part of the pension arrangements that we've got for the workforce. We've had some changes over the years with the age that you can flexibly retire. But if we had anything that was changing the rules round about that would be part of a report on the pension arrangements, which would come back to this committee. I'm not aware of anything on the cards that would bring that into immediate force.
That's fine. I was just worried about that rumour. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I don't have any urgent business, colleagues. But I'd just like to thank everybody for their attendance and have a nice afternoon.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.